And there's a lesson in history for all humanity. The Frederick Douglass, now we know that God had to intervene. Because what happened with Frederick Douglass? How could he be so literal? He read from reading a scrap of paper. And he had a slave master that actually, this lady allowed him to learn to read. But then he came in the hands of a bad master. Last thing he wanted African American reading. And so Frederick Douglass used to challenge the Caucasian. Show me that word. Bet you don't know that. Paul Laurence Dunbar said we were the max. Many of our people are so confrontational that they have forgotten strategy. Frederick Douglass, using strategy, became an educated, eloquent man. You think he wasn't fooled by Garrison? Read his autobiography. He said Garrison, he knew that he had a dependency. And Garrison had a desire to make it dependent. The last thing our liberal friends want for us is freedom. As long as you're that little child. It's like a woman may not like her husband. He was good when he was a drunk. Ah, girl, I can't get him straightened up. He drinks all the time. As soon as you straighten up, go to an AA meeting, clean. Then she said, that nigga ain't no good. I remember him when. That's what our liberal friends, that's how they're punishing us. So what excuse do the African American person have for not learning to turn the TV off? When Booker T. Washington walked 800 miles from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, to Hampton. And again, a great intellect. They had to crush his picture. He was so wise that Booker T. Washington wouldn't allow anyone to administer the chapel of George Washington Carver. Why? Because Carver was a religious scientist. And Booker T. Washington said most of the preachers are nothing but hustlers. And y'all go back and tell them that I said he found up too. But all of us preachers have had this problem. There's been two trends among the preachers. Mike Gomez calls it the griot entertainer tradition. And the second tradition is the philosopher King. Dr. King, those people, Dr. Calvin Taylor and others come from that tradition. The majority are nothing but entertainers. And they have got now people so souped up, so riled up, that all they will give them is an emotional charge. Yeah, brother, the white man, he ain't gonna give you nothing. Yeah, we got to get something for ourselves. We can go down and ask God to give us something. And you find he lives in an $8 million home with a white girlfriend. And a white neighborhood, but he's the only one there. And tell you, I want these niggas moving in here. That's a very famous preacher. That's the story. I won't name him. I unfortunately had the privilege of meeting him. And you know what? He's also an expert in Islam. One of the few of the 5 African American preachers that know the religion of Islam. He reads the Quran in Arabic. Obviously, he doesn't understand it. Otherwise, he would be with us. So we have to be aware of the tricks and schemes. Now, this is a lesson to humanity. The message of Booker T. Washington that goes out as a metaphysical message is under the most dreadful conditions, with commitment and determination, the human intellect can rise above conditions and form a discipline forward for social change. You know where Mr. Frog got the drilling from? Booker T. Washington. Imam Muhammad said that if you go to Tuskegee, you see the evidence of the drilling, the precision, the scientific thinking. You all should read Booker T. Washington. W.B. Du Bois came along, pushed by his training in Germany, and I heard Gates and West challenge him. Oh, if he hadn't been a propagandist, he would have been the greatest. None of you have even done it. I'm going to tell you something. Imam Muhammad loved Cornell West. One of our great imams down in Atlanta was a student. I challenged Professor West once. And I said, Professor West, I won't tell you the question is, but we don't want to. Certain things we don't want to get into now because we go out in the public, we don't want to attack certain groups. But I asked him why he was supporting it. So, to be evasive, he knew he recognized I had to be somebody different. So he said, oh, you want to put him in Watley's boy. I went to school with him at Harvard. That's all you know, man, Imam Cleveland. I said, yeah. I said, yeah, that's right, Professor West. You say you're in the tradition of the black church, you're in the tradition of Howard Thurman, you're in the tradition of Dr. Mays. How then can you justify combined moral weakness and likeness? Huh? How can you do that? How can you theologically justify that? He said, sidebar. Sit with me. He said, brother, can you love the sinner, but not the sin? I said, yes. Just don't say that. I said, I will never ask you that at Union Seminary. But we have to engage our people. Yes, sir. I've asked him to engage. We're going to have a discussion with him. The African American Muslims who were not from our association, they have reached out to him. That's right. Some of the leaders in our community didn't bring him to Imam Muhammad. They didn't want him to have Imam Muhammad to have that kind of dignity because they're working secretly with different agencies to keep this community suppressed. But Imam Muhammad said he liked it. I still have to ask you, I got to pray along, give me some guidance. I will say this about Professor West. He started off good. And I believe he got good intentions. I believe of all of them, he's the most sincere one of them. I think we must engage him, challenge him to produce real scholarship, challenge him to come out of the entertainment culture, challenge him to do serious work. And don't do what our people, that they work on our people, is envy and jealousy. They started that on the plantation. In other words, he is jealous of Du Bois. Let me be honest with you and tell you. We, the African Americans in America, have not yet reached W.E.B. Du Bois. We have not reached it. There's been no scholar, and I'm familiar with all of them, from the beginning to the end. William Barley, the history of African American people, all the way down to some of the most minor figures of African Americans, not even touched him. They can't touch him. He's a well-educated person. But Professor Du Bois was influenced heavily by Hegel, by Engels, and by Marx. And as a result of that, he was to be a man that rejected the commonality of human beings. This is not his fault. That's what he did. He rejected. But as a scholar, he cannot be superseded. And they used him against Booker T. Washington. In history, we have to correct that. Now we're going on, we're going to come right now to the next focus, is the coming of Mr. Farrar. First Marcus Garvey. There was a period that the great scholar Rayford Logan calls the Nadir. We're in that Nadir now. A period of darkness. With this great opportunity, Imam Tariq Rahim said, we are people at the green light and the trifle of history. And we can't go. We just standing there. Something stopping us. So we in that Nadir. Marcus Garvey came, influenced by Deuce Muhammad, came with the idea to bring us back to Africa. You know, between the period of 1865 to 1910, they made us so ashamed of Africa we wouldn't identify with Africa. They had churches before that, we used to call ourselves African. The African Methodist Episcopal Church is an example of that. African Methodist Episcopal Zion